All right, welcome everyone back to another episode of the GolfForever Play Without Limits podcast. John back here today again with a very special guest. I'd mentioned in the very first episode that we were going to have some pretty cool guests on this show, and this one I think is the coolest yet. Mr. Damon Hack, co-host for Golf Today on Golf Channel. Damon, you have quite a successful career and background in sports journalism. How you doing today?
John, I'm great. I appreciate you having me on. And I think when people start talking about your resume, it means you're getting old. So I think that's why I've just been around a long time, from print journalism, now doing television for more than a decade. Golf Channel is the longest job I've ever had. It's been, 11 years in change at Golf Channel, and now NBC, also doing post-round interviews for the NBC golf season, which is a lot of fun.
That's really cool. So just looking at your bio here, speaking of your resume, so you were born in Los Angeles. You got a degree in history from UCLA, then a master's in journalism from UC Berkeley. You've covered golf, NFL for Sports Illustrated, the New York Times. You covered the New York Knicks for Newsday, the 49ers for the Sacramento Bee. And as you said, you've been with Golf Channel since 2012. You've even covered the Olympics, the biathlon in 2018 at Pyeongchang. So I want to start with that, Damon. And man, I mean, your career is awesome. What was it like covering the Olympics?
I have to say, John, I've covered the Masters, Super Bowls, the Open Championship. And for me, my favorite events that I've ever covered are the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang and the 2004 Summer Games in Athens. There's something so unique about covering the Olympics. In part, you're covering sports that you don't typically cover. Like, for example, Pyeongchang, I was assigned biathlon about 6 to 8 months before the event. So I had the challenge of boning up on this sport that's this hybrid of, ski, shooting from a long way away and cross-country skiing. And so I had to bone up about the rifles and bone up about the targets and obviously the stamina required by these athletes. And it's a Nordic-dominated sport. You see a lot of athletes from Denmark and Norway and Sweden and also France and Germany, very, very strong biathlon countries. So it was neat just in the run-up to learn these stories and find out how these athletes work. And then I got to Pyeongchang. We're talking the coldest, time of year. You're in the mountains. All the events are at night. You've got this heated vest. All of the reporters are drinking coffee and doing whatever you can to stay warm. And it's interesting. Let's be honest. Some athletes don't like being covered, don't like being interviewed. Biathletes, it was the exact opposite. They were so thankful to have the coverage and to have some reporters interested in what they do. And I'll never forget some of the athletes' names that I covered. Laura Dahlmeier from Germany, who won several gold medals in 2018. Johannes Tingnes Bo, a remarkable biathlete whose brother Tarjei Bo kind of led the way for him. And Dahlmeier told me that she would hike in the Himalayas and do all of these remarkable kind of mental tests before her races, like in the month leading up, so biathlon wouldn't feel as challenging if she was able to climb in the mountains and do some dangerous things and test herself. And it was cool just to kind of find out these backstories of these athletes who are training for years and years to make sure their heart rate is able to slow down and their breathing is right, and they can have the remarkable balance of the calmness to shoot at a target from 50 yards or 100 yards away, and then also to be able to have the power to ski cross country around a circle or an oval, or in some cases a slight incline. And in the fact that if you miss the target, you're adding seconds or minutes or laps to your endeavor. And one of my favorite things was to bring some of those stories back. And I was covering Bay Hill shortly after covering the Olympics, and I got to walk with Tiger Woods during his practice round. And I was like, hey, man, I just was covering biathlon. And he's kind of into like as you can imagine, he's just into athletic greatness and athletic
Yeah.
achievement. He's like, man, like, what are the guns like? And, what are these athletes like? And it was cool to share with Tiger just, these incredibly disciplined athletes from a different endeavor. And he thought it was very, very cool just to know that there were other athletes, at the top of their game and top of their sport, as he has been in golf for so long.
I love hearing that. And I think that speaks to you and the way you explain that. You're a fan of sports, aren't you?
Yeah, I love sports, and it's been interesting, as I've gotten older. And listen, I was I played 2 years of high school basketball, 1 year of high school tennis. Tried to walk on to UCLA my sophomore year,
Mm.
which is like trying to make the New York Yankees, as far as trying to play UCLA basketball. But I actually made it to the final 10. They took
Wow.
3 players. I still remember their names: Lou Ritchie, Chris Kinney, and Dave Paulsell. Beat me out for those spots. And we're talking like 1990, 91. And I cried in my towel. But I endeavored that I would always be involved in sports. I wanted to be
Mm.
involved in sports as an adult, even if I wasn't going to play in the NBA. I wanted to, back up Magic Johnson and be the Lakers point guard at some point in my youth. And when that dream died, I said, you know what, I want to be a good student and make sure that I, follow my dream, which is to be a broadcaster. I went to graduate school at UC Berkeley, got a master's degree in journalism, started my career as a sports writer, but had always quietly wanted to be, with a microphone, doing play-by-play or doing studio shows, and been fortunate to do both of those things. But even all the while I've been covering sports, I've always wanted to play sports, and I've done, whether it's flag football or they had something called the New York Urban Basketball League when I lived in the city, and dentists and lawyers and just middle-aged dudes that want to play basketball and stay in shape. And I was always a part of those leagues. And I have triplet boys who are 12. I've coached them 5 years in a row in rec basketball, and that's always a lot of fun. And for me personally, even as I've covered sports, I want to play sports. And I'm like a lot of folks, I'm watching like the Kobe Bryant, late great Kobe, in the motivational videos that come across Instagram, or Gino Auriemma, the great UConn women's basketball coach, and John Calipari and Mike Krzyzewski. There are videos that I watch that I get motivated for before a workout or before going to compete in a tennis tournament for old dudes. And I still love sports, and even as I cover them and talk about them, I still get hyped and passionate when I get to put on my shoes and compete as well.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I also come from a competitive background in various sports, golf obviously being one of them. And there's just something to competition, right? There's a feeling, there's a way that you get up for it, you get amped, you get the adrenaline going, and I think there's so many similarities to, as you pointed out. I mean, athletes and the way that they approach various sports and competition. It doesn't matter if you're at the top of the heap professionally or in the Olympics, or as you said, in the local Tuesday night league, going for glory. It's all about being your best, right? And I respect that, and I think a lot of our listeners definitely identify with that. So, to the point of your career in sports journalism, I think you laid it out nicely of what drove you there. Your transition from writing and the first time that you got into TV, what was that like with Golf Channel?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was a sports writer at the New York Times and Sports Illustrated, so I was at NYT from 2002 to '07, and then Sports Illustrated from 2007 to 2012. And every so often, there'd be a big story, and maybe like a television person would come by and want to ask you a question. Like I'd be at the Masters or at the Players Championship, and there'd be a Rich Lerner or a CNN camera. You want to put this story into perspective. So I was getting a few reps in the television world, and finally in 2012, I was covering the U.S. Open, and I was asked by the folks at Golf Channel, do I want to come to Orlando to try out for a relaunch of Morning Drive? And I was like, sure, I'd love to do that. So I covered that U.S. Open, and that was at Olympic Club in San Francisco, and I was able to go cover that event. I flew from San Francisco to Orlando So I would have got there on like Tuesday, and I sat across from Gary Williams on that Tuesday all the way till Friday. And that Friday evening, my agent called and said, Golf Channel wants to hire you, wants to bring you on full time. And it was remarkable. The comfort that I felt on television, I've get a little nervous. And even today, but it's more excitement. I've always felt comfortable telling stories and reporting and even good television. It's good journalism. Have you talked to the right folks? Are you grinding and doing the right things and making sure you're studied and you're prepared? And I've always felt prepared and ready to do the job. And it was just kind of transferring my skills from the writing genre to the television genre, and it felt really, really comfortable and smooth, John. Really, from the beginning. Why, I don't know, but it always really has.
That's awesome. No, I think that speaks a lot to the longevity of the career that you've had. So, give a picture to all of us. What's it like when that red light goes on? There's a lot. I've been on the set of some TV sets and at Golf Channel specifically a few times, and there's a lot of chaos that happens behind the scenes.
So much chaos. It's the perfect word. I mean, I did a show yesterday. So myself and Kira K. Dixon, who's been a wonderful addition to Golf Channel. She's at a lot of tournaments. She is a Miss America. I mean, talk about making a transition from one endeavor in field to another. But she and I hosted Golf Today, and we were doing the Solheim Cup opening ceremony, and our job was to do a half-hour show, 11:30 to 12. The ceremony was going to start at 12, and then we would have an hour of the ceremony and then a half-hour wrap-up show. Well, for whatever reason, and I'm just going to share this, I guess the Team Europe bus was like late to the site. So instead of the ceremony starting at 12, it starts at 12:20, which means all of a sudden Kira and I have an extra 20 minutes to fill. And we're having to do what is known in the business as vamp. So we're vamping, and I'm asking her questions about Team Europe, and she's giving me questions about Team USA and vice versa. We bring back another guest, Beth Ann Nichols from her home studio, and Cara Banks and Paige McKenzie get rebooted to talk to us. They'd already talked to us from the 11:30 to 12 half hour, but they've got to now talk to us from that 12 to 12:20, 20 minutes, because the ceremony, which was supposed to start at noon, didn't start off on time. So it's those types of things in this era of Zoom. Sometimes the Zoom hookup doesn't work, and maybe you're supposed to have a call scheduled with a Lanny Watkins or a Hale Irwin or Hal Sutton or Annika Sorenstam, and maybe, they're delayed or their internet isn't as strong. So there's all these things that, for the most part, the viewer at home has no idea. So the director and the producer are pulling their hair out, and everybody's kind of on edge. Sometimes we're having to throw a commercial break, but it's amazing how often it looks pretty smooth, and the viewer at home is none the wiser that, things are falling apart, or we're having to switch segments, and instead of interviewing Lilia Vu at 1:30, she's going to come on at 1:45 because we had to make a switch in the rundown. So live TV is very, very fluid, and that's where your preparation, John, really comes into play. Like, I had so much fun during that 20 minutes where we were a little bit on edge of our seats, but I was prepared, and Kira was prepared. We could throw out nuggets. This is the 18th Solheim Cup. The United States leads the all-time series 10-7. Europe has won 2 in a row, looking to win 3 in a row for the first time. Anna Nordqvist has a 7-6-0 record in foursomes. The most experienced European Solheim Cup team member. She's also an assistant captain. How will she carry and wear both hats this week? So you kind of get into a flow where you're vibing off each other and you're throwing out nuggets, and you trust your co-host that she's prepared, and she trusts you that you're prepared. And I tell you what, John, I'm not too shy to say it. A lot of times we make the channel look good, and that's our job, is to be professional and be prepared. And so the viewer at home, you don't want your host to look nervous. When you tune into a television show or a broadcast, you want to make sure that the person you're watching, you trust them. You feel comfortable in their hands. That's how I feel as a viewer. That's how I want my viewer to feel when I am hosting a show or in the field interviewing Scotty Scheffler as I did after he won the Players Championship. And I'm able to say, you know what, I see your grandmother is here, and I've talked to your dad and walked a couple of holes with him, and your sisters are here. Like you want to have more information than you know what to do with. And I can ask Scotty, as I did after his Players Championship round, what was it like to have your family here? And then he goes, I can't even answer the question. I'm looking at my dad over here crying, and you get these great moments on television. And in any endeavor, in any job you have, being prepared is what it's all about, whether you're a doctor or a broadcaster. And I love the challenge. I tell my kids, this is my homework. This is daddy's homework. When they walk by my office and see me with a book open, or I'm looking at our research notes for the day, I'm like, boys, this is daddy's homework. And I love the challenge of being prepared and knowing that sometimes when the red light comes on, the script isn't going to always follow as written, and you have to be prepared to adjust and to bob and weave. And it's a neat, unsettling, but a pretty neat challenge and feeling when you pull it off.
I love that. Yeah. And you pull it off on the regular, and it is darn impressive and fun to watch. And I think that's really good insight for everyone to understand that when you throw out those nuggets, those don't come easy. Those come through a lot of hard work and preparation. And so to the point of what you mentioned about Scotty, GolfForever Tour athlete, Scotty Scheffler, of course, you've had so many amazing moments now in sports journalism. What tops it for you?
Wow, that's a great question and a tough one to answer. Gosh, I'll tell you. There was a recent Tiger hosted a junior invitational out at Pebble last year. And, Tiger's been putting his body back together quite a bit. Mm-hmm. This was a time pre-plantar fasciitis, post-car accident. And he had a bunch of junior golfers there. And kind enough, Tiger and his folks asked me to come host the event out at Pebble. I'm from California. Asked me to be the first tee starter, announcing the kid's name. And then I also got to host this dinner with Tiger, and we're answering questions, and we're getting anecdotes and telling stories. And I've covered Tiger now for 20 years. So I've covered, a lot of the highs and some lows as well. And it was just neat to see Tiger in an environment outside of the normal PGA Tour or major championship competitive schedule. Underappreciated is what Tiger has done for a lot of kids in Southern California. And it was just neat to see him in that realm. And at one point, he was telling stories about working out during the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble and signing autographs for kids, and a dad being surprised that he was in the gym before a round, and Tiger saying, well, I actually just got back from running 3 miles before that. Just learning about what it's like to be with a high-level athlete who works even harder than you know. And Tiger was telling some Kobe Bryant stories, and you're hearing me mention a lot of Lakers and Kobe. I'm a Laker fan from LA, as is Tiger, so it was neat to hear Tiger talk about conversations he had with Kobe. And I'm sitting in the room as a LA native, like Tiger, Laker fan like Tiger, and here's Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer of all time, talking about one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and the conversations that they used to have, and Kobe telling Tiger, what are you willing to give up to be great? What are you willing to sacrifice to be great? And Tiger telling those stories to the kids in that room. And I tell you, John, like, I went to go work out after that. Like I was motivated. Yeah. It just being in this realm. That was one of my like goosebump moments to hear Tiger talk about stories that he had with Kobe and sharing those with kids. And here I am in my 50s, able to appreciate that. And I think about that conversation with Tiger. And when I'm working out or when I'm doing a podcast and able to share those stories, I get the goosebumps all over again. And so being with Tiger and covering, and I've covered some of his Masters wins, 2005 when he chipped in to beat DeMarco, on that incredible 16th hole, and beat him in the playoff 2005. Was at actually as a golf fan in 2000 when he completed the career Grand Slam. I was actually covering the NBA at that time for Newsday, but seeing that 8-shot win, which followed the 15-shot win at Pebble, is what made me really want to be a golf writer. But most of my favorite memories in the business involve covering Tiger Woods, and the other ones would be the Olympics. Just the incredible dedication and also the diversity of athlete. And you get these moments, and the world is a big place, and there's strife and there's war, and you just all of a sudden see all these athletes from all over the world coming together, staying in an athlete village, trading pins and stories and hugging each other, even if they might come from not just rival nations, but nations that are at war, in the overwhelmingly positive messages that so many athletes try to send and share to the rest of us. I'm totally in the bag for the Olympics. I love the athletic feats that these folks that might not have the headline names and necessarily the biggest sports, but the dedication they show is really, really something to behold and appreciate.
Yeah, I love that, and love hearing about the Tiger stories. I was fortunate to meet him once, early in my career as well, and we'll never forget the day. And it's one of those things. A lot of people can say that when they meet famous athletes that motivate them, and he continues to motivate you. It sounds like, which is really cool to hear. So, you spoke, Damon, about the kind of the state of the world in a way of affecting sport. And I'm curious with golf, live, and everything that's been happening in the last couple of years in our sport, what it's pushed the PGA Tour to do, all the different dynamics, the news stories, the players like Phil Mickelson who have been in the epicenter of the news. I kind of an open-ended question, if you don't mind me asking. What's your take on all of this? And you were, effectively part of reporting on that, which certainly during some of those let's call them tense moments is probably has been an interesting thing for you. So how have you navigated through that?
Yeah, I tell you what, I've seen all sides of this story, and you're talking about someone who pre-live had spent 3 hours with Greg Norman in his office in South Florida. I'm a wine guy. I collect wine. One of my hobbies is collecting wine and drinking wine and tasting wine and talking about wine. And Greg Norman is someone who's had wine for many, many years. And I did like the pictures with him and wrote a chapter in a potential book on Greg, and quietly as someone growing up in kind of discovering golf in the 90s, rooted for Greg, and was crushed when he lost the Masters in 96 to Nick Faldo. So, we have that great day together. And I recall at the end of our time, I was like, where you headed, Greg? Because he's always traveling. So I'm actually going to Saudi Arabia. I'm talking to them about building golf courses. I was like, oh, okay, cool. See you later. And, in the months that followed, we find out that there's this rival circuit that is coming, and it's backed by Saudi Arabia and this public investment fund. And I'll just be honest, I've been torn by it because, NBC and Golf Channel, we have a relationship with the PGA Tour. We cover and carry Corn Ferry Tour and PGA Tour Champions and all of the PGA Tour events. And I, like a lot of folks, saw this rival circuit as a threat. And we kind of followed, and I shouldn't say we, because everybody had their own take. I mean, we had people at our channel leave to go work for Live. David Faraday, one, Jerry Foltz, another. But I kind of took the tack of, I'm a PGA Tour guy. I'm threatened by this. I don't like the fact that it's 54 holes. I don't like the fact that it's backed by this deep-pocketed rival who apparently had ordered the hit and death of a Washington Post journalist. And me being someone who was once offered a job from the Washington Post and has friends that work at the Washington Post, I was like stunned and saddened by that story. So that's kind of been my take on it. And I, like a lot of people, I was absolutely stunned when Jay Monahan showed up on CNBC with Yasser Al-Rumayyan talking about this framework agreement after the commissioner had said, hey, you never have to apologize for being a member of the PGA Tour, and talking about 9/11 and 9/11 families. I mean, these are heavy, heavy, strong statements from the commissioner. And I kind of found myself in lockstep with that line of thinking. So, here we sit now, several months after the announcement of that framework agreement, and I've talked to people inside and outside. And I think a lot of us are just tired by the vitriol, by the lawsuit, which has now obviously been put to the side. As a journalist, been a fascinating story to cover. I'm a little concerned and curious what this ultimate product is going to look like. Is this going to be a PGA Tour with team aspects? Is it going to be a live golf tour? Is it going to be a combination? Are Bubba and Brooks and DJ and Harold Varner coming back? Is peace going to reign in professional golf? Is the backing of the public investment fund going to make our professional sport better? There's so many questions and so many unknowns. But I will tell you, when the day of that framework agreement, we did 8 hours of television. I was on the air for 7 of those 8 hours, and only time we went up to use the restroom was when we were rerunning an interview that we had, and it was like one of those fascinating days in television where you're like, just give me the ball. What's next? Who's our next guest? You run on adrenaline. You love those days. You live for those days. I did as a New York Times reporter, as a Sports Illustrated guy, and I do in television. When you have breaking news, you just go, go, go. Because typically you're talking birdies and bogeys, and congratulations on Saith Tagala for winning for the first time on the PGA Tour. And we were having these seismic news days a lot in the last year and a half or so. I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm a little bit concerned with all the talk about money because the PGA Tour has really focused mostly on charity. And I feel like in some ways are we as a sport selling our soul? I guess we'll see. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm glad that folks like Tiger and Rory are using their voice and kind of throwing their weight around and being ambassadors for the game. But my head's been spinning, John. I'm not going to lie. It's been a fascinating and unbelievable in some ways turnabout from where the PGA Tour stood a year ago to where it stands today.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it is I think the sports head has been spinning in a lot of ways. Everyone is still trying to catch up to the news cycle, and those are the sentiments coming from people at the center of that, even because they're trying to catch up to it and figure out what's going on. And as you pointed out, it's not just kind of the normal news cycle, it's world news, and it spans way beyond golf, even into politics and just the security of our nation, which a lot of those sentiments come up. And I find it very fascinating overall, and it's really good to hear your take. But I want to now switch gears. Let's get to something a little bit more positive. This is the GolfForever Play Without Limits show. And Play Without Limits, that's a big part of the mission of our brand. What does that mean to Damon Hack?
I love that phrase and that term. To me, Play Without Limits, I'd probably say there's two components when I hear that. One is a physical component, playing without limits, being able to play the way you want to play, being unburdened physically, whether that means you're loose and limber and able to make the shoulder turn you want to make the hip turn you want to make, being able to hit the golf ball the way you want to. It doesn't mean you're always going to hit it straight, but being able to walk 18 holes, or if you're a rider, ride 18 holes and play unburdened. And I think that's, listen, the older I've gotten, the more I realize that playing 36 holes is a lot harder to do. Used to be able to do it without even thinking twice. Now I'm making sure if I do play 36, which is very rare, but I'm changing my socks and making sure I don't get the blisters. And, there's Advil can be your friend. There's like things you can put on your elbow to lessen the shock of the ball hitting the club. So I'm definitely more cognizant of that. But I think, playing with no limits is a beautiful term that there's a physical component, which is being able to play the way you want to. But I also feel like there's a mental component as well. And as we know, sports and golf in particular being clutter free. And I've found myself, as someone who works at Golf Channel, you think, well, gosh, you have all this access to teachers and theories, like you should be a plus two. And in some ways, and it took me maybe 10, maybe 9 of the 11 years I've been there to realize that all of that access can't necessarily be, it's not necessarily a good thing. When you have one teacher come in one week and saying, this is how I do it, and the next teacher comes the next week and says, Damon, this is the way to do it. You know, your head can be spinning, speaking of head spinning. So in the last year or so, I've played my best golf with very limited swing thoughts. And playing without limits is, to me, there's a mental component where I get up on that tee and I'm just seeing, okay, I want this ball to go toward that tree 250 yards in the distance, or there's a cloud up there, or there's a hillside, and that's where I'm aiming. I am no longer thinking about, is my elbow doing this? Is my arm doing that? Where's my weight shift going to be? Because for a time I had too many swing thoughts. And now it's just athletic. It's target, go. Like I see the target, I step up, and I go. I practice not a lot, much more than I used to. I have a bunch of books, and I've read some of the, the Zen Golfs and, and Fearless Golf, and I still like those books. But I've really come to believe that the less I have rounding around in my brain when I step on a golf course, the better. And funny story, I've played in this, it's called the 100 Black Men of Stamford, Connecticut tournament. I've played the last 3 years in Stamford, Connecticut. It's right on the Connecticut-New York border. And there's a pro there who saw me play there a year plus ago. This was around the time I was still, maybe even 2 years ago, I was still lost in swing thought. And like, I was a little embarrassed. Like the guy's driving around and watching the tournament unfold. And he happened to come upon me on a tee box at a time when I had 8 swing thoughts. And I hit this dastardly, dreadful, low snap hook into the trees, like an embarrassing shot. Like, everyone knows I work at Golf Channel, and I hit one of the ugliest shots ever. And you're scuttling into your golf cart and not trying to make eye contact with this assistant pro who's like, wait a second, I see you on TV 5 days a week. So fast forward to 2 years later, which is about 2 weeks ago, same assistant pro, he takes his golf cart and he sees me on a par 4, and I've got this 3-wood. It's about a 350-yard hole. And I get the 3-wood out, and I know he's behind me, and I got like no swing thoughts. It's just, okay, I see that tree in the distance. John, I took the 3-wood back, and I absolutely obliterated it right down the middle of the fairway.
Love it.
And I turned back to him, and listen, I'm no good. I'm a 15, 16 handicap, but I'm getting better, and that number is lowering. And I turned back to him, and I just give him a little bit of a head, little cap, tip of the cap, and he gives it to me. And then I see him later in the round, and I hit driver, and I hit another good drive. I hit drive down the middle. And he drives up to me, and he goes, you know what? I'm going to tell Rich Lerner the next time I see him that you've gotten better. Because Rich is a member of Rock Rimmon, which hosts that 100 Black Men of Stamford golf tournament. So that was like a personal victory for me, and just further evidence and credence to the fact that the less I have in my head, the better. And to me, that was playing with no limits. And it just, the competitor in me loved the fact that, like, that guy thought I was a chop and saw me hit a couple of really good shots, and that he knew that I knew that he was watching, and all of that, and to be able to pull those shots off. And by the way, we won the tournament, the mixed flight.
That helps.
So
that's great.
I've got don't have as many trophies as my boys, but but I'm sneaking up on it. I'm trying to add some trophies to the old man little trophy case here at the house.
I love hearing that, Damon. Yeah, I think everyone can identify with the feelings and emotions that this crazy game of golf instills in us. And I think, to the point of being athletic, it's interesting. I mean, we had Justin Leonard, GolfForever Tour athlete Justin Leonard, of course, on the show a couple episodes ago, and he himself, with his storied career, had almost had like this epiphany recently of being athletic, and that is what he is working on. And I think your point of having too many swing thoughts, 8, 10 swing thoughts, hits home with all of us because just when we think we're tracking well in this game, all of a sudden it sneaks up on us, and we're not, and we're astray, and we're trying to find it again. And that's part of the beauty of this game, right?
It really is. And I'm a big fan of Justin. Obviously, he's been a colleague of mine at NBC and Golf Channel. And a funny story, when he lived in Aspen, I let him know that I was coming out with the family. And he actually met up me, his wife, met me and my wife and boys for lunch at the Aspen City Museum in town. And it was just so neat. And Justin is always, I shouldn't say always, but in the last few years for sure, but I don't know how much longer it's been, but he's always, in my mind, taking care of his body, at least in the last few years. And he and his wife eat healthy. They work out, they stretch, they look great. And it's not an accident, and he, when he lived in Aspen, they were avid skiers, and he had the whole JL Mountain Man motif and handle on Instagram and Twitter. I know he's in Florida now, but I appreciate the work that Justin has put in to his body as he's gotten to the 50 and over set now, playing on PGA Tour Champions, and there's a reason why he's going to play well out there, is because he's looked after his nutrition and his body as well.
Yeah, exactly. And he was on, and he's predicting that and feeling like he's going to win soon. And I absolutely believe that as well. And I'm excited to speak with him after that does happen. So on that point, Damon, you and I talked a little before we got on here about your own fitness, and curious if you can share with everyone, how do you stay fit, active, healthy, energetic, mentally sharp, as you said, with some of the chaotic nature of your job? You're traveling around, you're in different time zones. How do you keep it going?
Yeah, to me, John, exercise is part and parcel with my preparation to go on television. It gives me energy. When I'm on the road, I find out where the gym is in the hotel. That's the first thing I'm doing. I bring bands with me. Recently got GolfForever, and I do my stretches and lunges with that. It's a part of my daily regimen. I have a bike, a Trek bike that I ride, and I live in Connecticut, hilly Westport. There's like wonderful areas to ride where you're having to grind and ride uphill, and you get some downhill. I made a little challenge to ride my bike to all the golf courses kind of in the neighborhood, and I'm talking like miles away, but just to take a little picture and say, okay, I made it to Aspetuck Valley, which is where I'm a member, or Rolling Hills not too far, or Shore Haven in Norwalk. And now I got to find the next golf course I want to ride my bike to. But to me, and I've seen my colleagues. I see Dan Hicks in the gym, and you see Justin, and you see your colleagues working out, and there are no accidents. And there's the prep work of reading your packets and knowing the field and knowing the storylines, but there's also the energy that I get from making sure I'm as healthy and as strong as can be. And when I'm at the U.S. Open, as I was in L.A., which is my hometown, staying at a hotel, waking up early for shows, I'd wake up a little earlier just to make sure I got a good half hour, 45 minutes in the gym. And I do strength, I do cardio, I do stretching. Stretching has become way more important for me now than it was when I was in my 30s and 40s. But I don't want to be that overweight, out of shape guy. And when you're in the sports business, there are a lot of shortcuts you could take. You go to arenas and you go to stadiums and you go to golf courses. There's a lot of shortcuts you can take, a lot of starchy, fatty food in the bag that you can have. And sometimes you can't help it. You gotta eat. You're in a hurry. But I always try to make sure I get my protein and vegetables and fruit, and I notice a difference when I'm on the air if I've worked out. It's noticeable, it's important, and it's funny. I'm in a group thread of just a bunch of buddies, guys, and whenever one of us does a workout, we send that workout to the thread. We call it the shred thread because someone has just done, someone has just shredded some weights and worked out. So this morning, I I did, let's see, I did this thing called Chris Heria has an ab workout. So I did some like it's a, you're doing like mountain climbers and in like it's like 8 different ab workouts. And then I did like some farmers walks, and I did curls, and I did incline bench, and I did goblet squats, and I did banded walks because I'm really working on strengthening my legs. And I had a knee issue where I had to have my knee drained twice, which was no fun. So I'm doing these little tedious little leg lifts, which, you're thinking back to Jane Fonda in the 80s, you're doing leg lifts, but, Jane was onto something. You're doing these little tedious things, help your legs. And I always close every workout with some good hip flexor stretching and some back stretching. And then I'm done with my workout, and I literally typed out every single workout that I did, every single exercise, whether I did it 3 times, if it's like a plank hold, how many minutes did your plank hold? And at the bottom, I just write stretch, and I write lifestyle. It's a lifestyle for us, and we keep ourselves motivated. There are 5 of us on this shred thread, and we, sometimes it's a great week and everybody's weighing in and checking in, and sometimes it's a slow week. But typically myself and one of my bosses, actually Matt Hegarty at Golf Channel, we kind of carry the shred thread for the most part, and we're motivated. And there's been times like I'll wake up and Matt's already done his workout, and I'm like, hey, I'm motivated to work out just because my guy has sent in his workout already. So John, working out, exercise, I'd say it's as important to me as my prep work. And also, I have 12-year-old triplet boys. I want to play basketball with them. I want to play tennis with them. I don't want to just cheer them on, which I do. I also want to be on the field or in the swimming pool with them and having fun. And they keep me young. They beat me up and wear me out, but they also keep me young as well. And that's another reason why exercise is so important to me.
Yeah. One 12-year-old boy is probably needed enough energy. 3 of them. That's amazing. And so, Damon, thank you so much. I do want to say, I don't think we could end this on any better of a note than talking about the shred thread. That's fantastic. But thank you so much for the time today and the insight. And I would love to do this again with you. And, best of luck and continued success with everything that you do. And really appreciate this.
John, thanks so much for having me. I'll join you anytime. And congratulations on all the success with GolfForever.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening today, and we will see you soon.